My daughter-in-law tried to put me under guardianship. I fought back and honey, I am still standing right here, telling you every single thing that happened, because the truth needs to come out and I am not ashamed of one word of it. Hi. My name is Margaret Whitaker. I am 72 years old. I live in Dayton, Ohio, in the same suburb I have called home for going on 31 years. Quiet, decent neighborhood. Brick houses with green lawns. Neighbors who wave from their driveways. A church 2 blocks down the road where I have sat in the same pew every Sunday since before my son was married. I know every crack in the sidewalk on my street. This is my home. The one I paid for with 30 years of 12-hour shifts on the cardiac unit at Miami Valley Hospital. I was a cardiac nurse. That means I kept people alive. I read heart monitors in the middle of the night when doctors were asleep. I made calls. I made decisions. I held the hands of people afraid they were going to die. My supervisor called me the backbone of that unit. I retired 4 years ago not because I had to, but because I chose to. I wanted time. My time. Time to tend my garden, go to church, call my grandchildren, and sit on my front porch with a glass of sweet tea and just breathe. I was happy. I was healthy. I was sharp as a tack and I knew it. And then my daughter-in-law, Sandra, decided that was a problem. Sandra married my son, Daniel, 11 years ago. I want to be fair from the very beginning because that is the kind of woman I am. When Daniel first brought her home, I tried. I welcomed her. I cooked for her. I asked about her family and her dreams. She was polite enough in those early years, cold maybe, but I told myself some people take time to warm up. I gave her years. I watched her children, my grandchildren, Cooper and Lily, when she and Daniel needed time away. Cooper is 9 now. Lily is 6. They are the joy of my life. Every Friday afternoon for 2 years I picked Cooper up from school for what he calls Grandma Fridays. We bake cookies. We watch old cartoons. He tells me about his week. Those afternoons are sacred to me. Sandra never liked it. Little comments here and there. You do not have to do so much, Margaret. We do not want Cooper to be a burden to you. Are you sure you are feeling all right? You look a little tired. I brushed it off. I thought she was being considerate. I did not realize she was building something. I did not realize those little comments were the first bricks in a wall she was constructing around me, one quiet remark at a time. It starts in February. This February, just a couple of months ago. I get a call from my doctor's office. Dr. Anita Reeves, my primary care physician of 8 years. The receptionist tells me someone called on my behalf to request my medical records and ask about my cognitive health. I stop cold. On my behalf? I did not ask anyone to do that. I call back and speak to the nurse directly and she confirms it. A woman called. She said she was a family member concerned about my well-being and wanted to know if I had been evaluated recently for memory issues or dementia. She gave her name as Sandra Whitaker. I sit down in my kitchen chair and I feel something I have not felt in a long time. Cold. A deep, slow cold that starts in your chest and spreads outward. Not anger yet. Not fear. Just this quiet, terrible clarity. Something is happening here. Something I need to pay attention to. I call Daniel. He does not answer. I call again. He picks up on the third call, sounds distracted, a little rushed. I tell him what happened. There is a pause that lasts too long. And then he says, "Mom, Sandra has just been worried. You have been alone out there and she thought it might be good to get a baseline on your health." I tell him I have a baseline. I go to my doctor every 6 months. My blood work is excellent. My mind is fine. He says, "I know, Mom. I know. Just do not be upset with her. She means well." I hang up and I sit very still. Then I walk to my kitchen window and look out at my backyard. At my rose bushes I pruned 2 weeks ago. At the bird feeder I filled this morning. And I make a decision. I am going to watch. I am going to pay attention. Because something in my chest, that same instinct that kept cardiac patients alive for 30 years, is telling me this is not over. It is not over. 3 weeks later I get a letter. An actual physical letter, mailed to my home, from an attorney who specializes in elder law and guardianship proceedings in Montgomery County. The letter informs me that a petition has been filed with the Montgomery County Probate Court, requesting that I be placed under a legal guardianship. The petitioner is Sandra Marie Whitaker. The petition claims that I am, and I am reading directly from the page, exhibiting signs of cognitive decline, inability to manage personal finances and daily affairs, and potentially unsafe living conditions that pose a risk to herself and others. Unsafe living conditions. In my home. The home I own. The home I have kept for 31 years. The home where I planted every flower in that front garden with my own 2 hands. I read that letter twice. Then I fold it and set it on the kitchen table. I put the kettle on. I make tea. I sit down. And then I do what I was trained to do for 30 years when a situation is serious. I assess. I think. I make a plan. First, I call my neighbor Ruthann Carter. Ruthann is 68. A retired schoolteacher. My neighbor for 22 years and my friend for just as long. I tell her what is in the letter. Ruthann is quiet for a second and then she says, "Margaret and Whitaker, you get yourself a lawyer today. Not tomorrow. Today." Ruthann has been through her own family battles. I listen. Second, I call my church. First Methodist of Dayton. I speak with Pastor Gerald Moore, a steady man, a good man. The kind of pastor who actually shows up when life gets hard. I tell him what is happening. He listens the way only good pastors can, without interrupting. When I finish, he says, "Margaret, you have a community here. You are not going to go through this alone." I believe him. Third, I sit at my kitchen table with a legal pad and I write down everything. Every comment Sandra has made about my health. Every time she limited my access to the grandchildren. Every moment I can remember where something felt wrong. I fill 4 pages. Fourth, I call my bank and speak to my account manager. I explain that someone may attempt to gain control of my finances through a legal proceeding, and I want to know my protections. We talk for 40 minutes. And fifth, I find myself an attorney. Her name is Patricia Holloway, a 60-year-old woman right here in Dayton who has practiced elder law for over 25 years. When I sit across from her and tell her everything, she listens without blinking. When I finish, she says, "Mrs. Whitaker, guardianship is one of the most serious legal actions that can be taken against a competent adult. The burden of proof is on the petitioner. Based on what you are telling me, you will have no trouble showing competence." She pauses and then says, "What we need to figure out is why your daughter-in-law wants this so badly." That question sits with me all the way home. Why does Sandra want this so badly? I do what every good nurse does when they lack information. I gather more. I talk to Daniel's sister, my daughter Renee, who lives in Columbus. Renee tells me something that makes me sit up straight. She says Daniel changed his life insurance policy 6 months ago. Changed the secondary beneficiary. The new secondary beneficiary after Daniel is Sandra alone. Not the children split equally. Not a trust. Just Sandra. I filed that away. Patricia files a response with the probate court contesting the guardianship petition and requests an independent cognitive evaluation from a neutral neuropsychologist appointed by the court. I agree immediately. Gladly. Because I know what that evaluation is going to show. In the meantime, Sandra files a request to temporarily restrict my contact with Cooper and Lily while the petition is pending. She tells the court she is concerned the children are being exposed to an unstable grandparent. My heart breaks when I read that. Not for me. For Cooper. He calls me on a Thursday evening, confused, asking why he cannot come for Grandma Friday. I tell him as calmly as I can that there is some grown-up stuff happening but that I love him more than all the stars. He says, "Grandma, you are not weird or sick or anything. You are just Grandma." I have to hold the phone away from my face so he does not hear me cry. The cognitive evaluation happens on a Tuesday morning in March. Dr. Caroline Vance, appointed by the court and affiliated with Wright State University, is professional and completely fair. We spend 3 hours together. She tests my memory, reasoning, problem-solving, language, attention, spatial awareness. She asks about my daily routines and my finances, which I manage myself with a spreadsheet I update every month like I have done since 1987. At the end, she says she cannot share results directly, but that I will hear from the court. 3 weeks later, Patricia calls me. I can hear the smile in her voice before she even speaks. She says, "Margaret, Dr. Vance's report came back. Your cognitive scores are in the normal to above average range for your age group. No evidence of dementia. No evidence of impaired judgment. No evidence of inability to manage daily affairs." She has filed the report with the court. I make myself a cup of coffee and sit on my front porch and breathe for the first time in weeks. But we are not done yet. because now it is time to find out what is really behind all of this. Patricia has been doing her own digging. What she finds is not entirely surprising but devastating in its clarity. Sandra has been telling Daniel's family members and at least 2 mutual friends that I have been making poor financial decisions, that I gave large amounts of money to my church, that I am being manipulated by my pastor and neighbors, that I can no longer live independently. She has been saying these things for months, building a narrative, preparing the ground, and then Patricia finds something else. My home. The house I have owned outright for 11 years since I paid off the mortgage, currently valued at just over $320,000. If I had been placed under guardianship, a court-appointed guardian would have had legal authority over my assets, including my home, including decisions about whether I needed to move to a facility, including what would happen to those assets if I did. I sit with that for a long time. I call Daniel. This time he answers on the first ring. Something has shifted. He sounds different. The distraction is gone. I hear something I have not heard in a long time, real worry. I tell him everything. Not just the petition. All of it. The call to my doctor. The things Sandra has been saying to the family. The insurance policy. The house. The timeline. I lay it out calmly and clearly the way I would present a patient case during a shift handover. Facts. Evidence. Timeline. Daniel is quiet through all of it. When I finish he says, "Mom," and then nothing for a long moment. Then I did not know. I promise you I did not know all of this. I believe him. Daniel is not a bad man. He is a man who trusted his wife and did not look closely enough at what she was doing. He will have to reckon with that. That is between him and his conscience. The court hearing is set for the 2nd week of April. Patricia has prepared an extraordinary case. We have the neuropsychological evaluation showing my full competence. We have my financial records, meticulously maintained and completely in order. We have a statement from Dr. Reeves confirming I am in excellent health, and that the call to her office requesting my records was made without my knowledge or consent. We have Patricia's own documentation of the complete lack of legal or factual basis for the petition. And we have something else. Ruth organized it. I did not ask her to. She did it on her own because that is who Ruth and Carter is. She reached out to neighbors, to the church, to people who know me. 14 people signed a written statement attesting to my character, my daily functioning, my clarity, my independence, my presence in this community. People who have watched me garden, accepted my Christmas cookies, sat with me in the pew at First Methodist, borrowed my lawnmower and returned it the same day. Pastor Gerald Moore wrote a letter himself. 2 pages, single-spaced. He described my work at the church food pantry every other Saturday, my 3 years as a volunteer in the grief support group, my nursing background and how I have given that experience back to people in pain. He said, and I am paraphrasing because Patricia read it to me over the phone, "Margaret Ann Whitaker is one of the most capable and clear-headed women I have had the privilege of knowing. The suggestion that she cannot care for herself is not only factually incorrect, it is an insult to everything she has built." I cried when I heard that. Happy tears. Grateful tears. The kind that remind you that you are not alone no matter how alone someone tries to make you feel. The morning of the hearing, I put on my good navy dress. The one with the white collar. I do my hair. I put on my pearl earrings, the ones that belonged to my mother. I look at myself in the bathroom mirror for a long moment. 72 years old. A little more silver in my hair. A few more lines around my eyes. But those eyes are clear. They are steady. They are the eyes of a woman who has been in this place before. Not in a courtroom but in a place where everything is on the line and she has to hold it together and think and act. I know what to do here. The courtroom is smaller than I expected. Judge Harriet Dawitt presides. Serious woman, late 50s, with reading glasses. She pushes up her nose when she is thinking. She runs her courtroom with quiet precision. Sandra is there with her attorney. Daniel sits in the gallery behind me. Not beside Sandra. Behind me. I notice that. I do not turn around. But I notice it. Patricia presents our case methodically and brilliantly. She walks the court through the neuropsychological evaluation, letting Dr. Vance's findings speak for themselves. Then the medical statement from Dr. Reeves. Then my financial records. Then the community letters. Then the timeline laid out clearly showing every step Sandra took, every action made without my knowledge, every claim made without supporting evidence. Sandra's attorney attempts to argue the petition was filed out of genuine concern. Judge Dawood asks him to provide specific evidence. He cannot. No medical evidence. No financial evidence. No testimony from any licensed professional who has actually evaluated me. Only the word of Sandra herself. Judge Dawood is not impressed. The hearing lasts 4 hours. At the end, Judge Dawood denies the guardianship petition in its entirety. She states from the bench that there is no credible evidence of cognitive impairment, financial mismanagement, or inability to manage daily affairs. She says the evidence clearly demonstrates a competent, functioning adult with strong community ties and excellent records of self-management. She dismisses the case. She also issues a formal notation in the court record regarding the unauthorized contact with my medical provider and the complete lack of factual basis for the petition. That notation is public record. Stays there. I sit very still for a moment after the gavel comes down. Patricia squeezes my hand under the table. In the hallway afterward, Daniel finds me. He looks like he has aged 10 years in 2 months. He looks like a man who has been doing a lot of thinking in the quiet hours. He stands in front of me and says, "Mom, I am sorry. I should have listened to you from the beginning. I should have looked at what was actually happening instead of taking her word for it. I am so sorry." His voice cracks at the end. He looks like my boy again. Not the distracted man who brushed me off on the phone. My boy. I do not throw my arms around him and say all is forgiven immediately. I am his mother, not a saint. I tell him, "Daniel, I love you. I have always loved you. But you need to understand what happened here and what it means. Not just for me but for your children and your own life going forward." He nods. We have more conversations ahead. A lot more. But that is the start. Sandra does not speak to me. She walks past me in the hallway without looking at me. I look at her. Clearly. Directly. Without anger, because anger would give her something she does not deserve from me. I give her nothing but the honest weight of what she tried to do and what it cost her. She wanted to take my home, my freedom, my voice, my place in the lives of my grandchildren. She wanted to reduce a woman who spent 30 years keeping hearts beating to a name on a court document, a problem to be managed, a piece of property to be controlled. And she failed. I think she feels it. I think she will feel it for a long time. I drive home alone. I pull into my driveway and sit in the car for a minute. I look at my house. My brick house with the green shutters and the rose bushes and the welcome mat from the church fair that says, "Blessed to be home." And I think about what it would have looked like to lose this. To be stripped of the right to live in my own home. To have someone else making decisions about my life. To have the years of work and careful savings handed over to someone whose reasons had nothing to do with my well-being. I think about that and I feel something settle inside me that has been unsettled for months. Not just relief. Something older and stronger. The feeling of a woman who knows her worth and proved it. I get out of the car. I unlock my front door. I walk into my kitchen. I put the kettle on. Then I call Ruth and tell her it is done and she screams so loud I hold the phone away from my ear. I call Pastor Gerald and he says, "Praise God, Margaret," and I meant it, amen. Cooper calls me that Friday. He sounds relieved in the way 9-year-olds do when they do not fully understand what happened but know the scary thing is over. He asks if we can do Grandma Friday next week. I tell him, "Baby, I will have the cookie dough ready by 3 o'clock. He cheers. I want to say something to you directly because if you have watched this far I believe you are the kind of person who needed to hear this story. Maybe you have an elderly parent or grandparent and you are watching out for them. Maybe you are an older person yourself and you have felt something closing in, felt someone trying to define you as less than you are. Maybe you just needed to hear that a 72-year-old woman in Dayton, Ohio, in a navy dress with pearl earrings, walked into a courtroom and walked back out with her life intact and her name clean. Here is what I know. Age is not a weakness. Experience is not a liability. The years I spent on that cardiac unit, the discipline, the documentation, the clarity under pressure, all of that came with me into that courtroom. My community showed up with their letters and their words and they bore witness to a life. A real life that cannot be dismissed or handed over just because someone found it inconvenient. You fight for your life. You document everything. Every phone call, every comment, every letter, every date and time. You get yourself a good attorney. You lean on your community because they will show up for you if you have been the kind of person who shows up for them. And you do not apologize for standing up. I am Margaret and Whitaker. I am 72 years old. I live in Dayton, Ohio. I am a retired cardiac nurse. I tend my rose garden and I go to my church and I make cookies with my grandson on Friday afternoons. I manage my own finances. I make my own decisions. I sleep in my own house in my own bed every single night. And nobody is going to change that. Now before you go, tell me where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. I love seeing where all of you are coming from. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your grandmother, your mother, someone strong and still standing and still fighting, please give this video a like. Subscribe if you have not already because I have more to say and I am just getting started. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to fight back and that your voice matters. God bless you all. Take care of your grandmas. Love them while you have them.